Most deals look really good until you run the numbers. What I mean by that is a lot of investors might look at a deal and they'll just be like, that's a good deal, but they can't justify as to why. Well, this is a video about how to justify the why. I'm going to run you through what I do with clients and all the agents that I work with about how to actually run numbers. You need to see what actually matters before you buy it. We're going to look at a deal coming up here that actually just went live in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I want to kind of walk through like, when I buy it, is it a good deal? Is it the right fit for me? So I'm going to kind of switch over here in a second. You're going to kind of see me screen share for a little bit, and I hope it's something that is beneficial to you guys at the end of the day. Again, thank you guys so much for following. Feel free to like, share, subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know. Happy to do some public deal analysis just because I was taught how to do this and I want to make sure I can kind of give back to the community. Hey everybody, we're back. And so I want to just kind of take the time to walk you through what the screen looks like. On the left side, you're going to see we have the Bigger Pockets calculator here. I have a different tab. I'll open this up later. It's the investor cheat sheet that we give out to all of our clients. It's just kind of like a good rule of thumb, like 3 pages or so, a little bit less than that, about like just kind of hard and fast rules that we kind of all use back in the napkin math. And then you also have the Bigger Pockets calculator where you see on your screen. This is a great calculator. We use it to analyze rental properties pretty much on a daily basis, and it's plug and play. Now, the reality is there's some pretty quick rules, like the 1% rule. You can see if it's even worth looking at. Let's say that this, I just don't even want to consider that right now. I want to go through a kind of a deep dive. That's the whole point of this video. I want to show you what it's like to analyze the deal. On the right side, I have the multifamily rider, and I have the document showing kind of like a highlight of like a multifamily we're going to dive into. It's a 3-family in Manchester, New Hampshire. We're going to find out if this is really good for a house hack, if it's really, really good for to be an investor. So we'll take a look. We'll dive into this. So on the left, I'm going to plug in some info. We're going to use the calculator. I'm probably going to pull up the Zillow just to get some photos going, and that'll be it. So hope you guys are along for the ride. Should be a few minutes here. So let's kind of plug and play. Property address, pretty obvious. 8 Ribbon Street is here. What's the purchase price? They're asking $510,000. Now, closing costs, if you go to the investor cheat sheet, so I'll kind of take a pause here and let this thing load. So this is a great document. We give it out, again, like I said, to all of our clients, and it's basically a how-to video on how to actually use this. So it's there, but there's some quick, hard and fast rules. And so this is like, there's a quick screening, like how do you know if it's worth a deal or not? Some good metrics, cap rate, cash on cash return. What's good? What does that even mean? Some NOI assumptions that you should kind of be aware of between like all the utilities and whatnot. So I'm going to be probably rattling off some numbers, but it's important for you to know that like this is where the information is. And so we give this out. If you're wondering how I know what rents are, honestly, I use the HUD pretty religiously. You can use it for the short-term rental intel and MTR intel, but for LTRs, I honestly focus on the HUD primarily. And if you want to look at if the neighborhood's good, you got spot crime, great software. If you're wondering how I know kind of some like rough metrics on unit turns and whatnot, this is all kind of here. This is what average stuff costs. And again, I'm biased. This is towards New England. So if you're in Cleveland, if you're in Ohio, you could be in Michigan. This might be a little bit different, especially California. These numbers might be a little off, so you should be kind of an expert in your market. Again, target region notes, you guys can kind of see what we're working with. We're primarily New England. We're expanding quickly, but I want to make sure I pinpoint that. You can see our login info. It's all here. We give it out, so it's all there for everybody that wants to use it. And so at this point, I want to make sure this exists. So let's kind of dive back into this calculator. Now, closing costs, it's in the investor cheat sheet. Typically, it's 3% of the purchase price. So that's just like a really good rule of thumb. Now, if you don't know what closing costs are, that's basically the additional money you have to pay on top of whatever your down payment is to buy an asset in real estate. And the closing costs, typically it's like paying your lender, title and attorney, taxes, like transfer tax and whatnot. So you want to be mindful of that. So it's an extra, 15 grand out of your pocket at the end of the day. Now, I'm going to keep this pretty easy. I cheat a little bit using this. So we'll go over like the rehabbing property and itemized closing costs. I don't want to get super nitty gritty. This is just like a rough stroke at the end of the day. Finance in detail. Let's say I'm an investor. Fine, that's for 20% down. Right now, interest rates are hovering around like 6.1, give or take, with 0 points, 30-year term. What's the gross monthly income? Looks like we got 2 vacant units and $1,200 a month coming in. We want to look at, we're going to get it at the current, and then we'll get it to stabilize later. Let's check the rider. So almost $6,100. Okay. 6050 is the property taxes per year. And now insurance, they did not put insurance either. They put a lot of these as unknown. It looks like the person that owns it is also an agent and hasn't really owned it for that long, which is fine. So insurance, probably, I'm going to say in Manchester, it's getting a little expensive. Let's say $3,000 a year. Again, that's an assumption on the investor cheat sheet. Now, this is the fun part, repairs, maintenance. This is basically for those little fixes you do all the time. It could be like replacing minor things, maybe having a PM company and just stuff to account for. But honestly, repairs and maintenance has to do with like small things, like, you know, one-offs every month, like my fridge is broken, this and that. So you got to make sure you keep those in mind. CapEx are for the bigger items. Those are like the saving for the roof, for like a boiler. You got to save those every month. So honestly, what I tell everybody is like these four here should equal pretty close to 20% most of the time. They're gonna be around that range. Vacancy in the area, I can tell you, is less than 2%, which is really good for New England. Other areas of the market, very different. I recommend kind of talking to local PM companies and see what their vacancy rate is. Your state might even have data to look it up. New Hampshire, like Manchester, is like 2%. I know banks will be more aggressive and they use 4%, but for the purposes of today, we're going to do 2%. Cheapest property management fee I find all the time is 8%. Even I self-manage personally, and I'll charge myself 8%. So I kind of use this as a metric. Again, this is all equaling 20%. So I know of the rental income every month, saving 20% aside for these things is pretty important and keeps you afloat and kind of protects your, you know, your barrier. For electrical, it looks like if you look in the rider here on the right, tenant pays the electrical. And so there's probably a common meter. Typically, if there's just a common meter, it's $35 a month. Looks like the landlord pays hot water, which could be electrical or gas. I'm not really sure. What I would recommend here is probably, I'd give yourself like a nominal value. Give it like $50 a month, just in case. Landlord pays water, sewer. My golden rule is $150 a month. There's no way to municipal garbage, so Manchester takes care of that. And then other, some people put $100, some people put $0. I'm gonna be a little conservative here. And obviously, this isn't gonna look good. But we punch all these numbers in. We hit finish analysis. So if you bought this day one, this will be whopping wonderfully, losing you almost $2,600 a month, essentially, just a little bit over. So what's cool about this is that you get some nice breakdowns. You get to see income, expense, cash on cash ROI, and then you get to see what your mortgage payment is. And you can kind of toggle these and play around with this stuff, and you get to see a nice breakdown. You can even do this, hit share, download report. I don't let this load. And so I think it's kind of nice because you'll see this, you know, this document kind of get published. So I told you this was for at current, right? So what I like to do is I like to show that's current, but what about in 12 months when I've done all the work I want to do and everything? So let's say I don't negotiate price whatsoever. Let's say we get price at asking for simple purposes. Easiest thing you could toggle is you could go up and down the purchase price for it to make sense. Let's just leave that alone for now. Let's play around with this. So let's say I put 20% down and I know 2 units are vacant, but I got to put money into those units probably. And let's prove that even a little bit more. Let's look it up. 8 Ribbon Street, Manchester. All right. So out of the gate, let's look at some photos. I got a boarded up window here. Classic. Got some rough landscaping. Looks like obviously the occupied one. It looks just like a little rougher. Probably been here for a few years is my guess. You have the black ceiling tiles, like the drop ceiling. Yeah, I mean, like you got these patches on the wall. So this probably needs some love. I mean, these tiles don't look super great. Back porch and everything look cool. This looks fine. Again, it's winter and these are like summer photos, so I don't know what's going on. It's been around the market for 66 days. It needs some cleanup. There's some good parking. There's like this blue tarp here covering stuff. I'm gonna assume, to be totally honest, everybody, you probably need 3 unit turns, is my guess. Plus you gotta do some CapEx, but we're saving up for that. So what I would do, and this is just me playing with this calculator. If I do 3 unit turns, each unit turns 25 grand. So let's say this place takes $75,000. We're going to consider that. But then let's look at what this was going to rent for. It's 1 3-bedroom. And I know that there's 2 1-bedrooms, which is interesting. And I also know that this is actually not adding up with what the document is saying. So let's just say we're going to get 3 empty units and we're going to do 3 unit turns. We'll make it super easy on ourselves at the end of the day in 12 months. So I'll get all the tenants out and we'll redo this whole thing. So what I actually do is I go to the HUD, click fair market rate. Let's go down to New Hampshire. And let's go to Manchester. So this is what's going to set in the standard for most of the rents across the country, to be honest. This is just what the government is saying is everything is fair market rent. And so if you look here, I know I have a 3-bedroom and 1-bedrooms. It's saying fair market rent is around $2,400 and around $1,500 for 1-bedrooms. So I'm going to basically say 1,500 times 2 and then 2,400. Now, I'm actually lied to you there. Apologies. I would actually do $100 less. Be a little conservative. I do that intentionally in case, I don't get the top rent of the market. So I'll say 1,400 times 2, and then I'll probably do 2,300 times 1 by itself. We'll make that work. So if I take a look down here, like I said, let's do some quick math. So 1,400 times 2 plus 2,300. This place will make 5,100 bucks a month at its performance, at its top level. Now, I just told you I gotta put some work into it. So right here, if you bought it for this and it rented for this, boom, hit the 1% rule. Not bad. I don't think that's gonna happen. So we're gonna put about 75,000 bucks into this. So let's say we bought it for 510, and then we put 75 grand into it, and that's just 3 unit turns. I'm actually gonna change the purchase price to all-in cost. This is a little cheating. This is where I'd probably go into an Excel spreadsheet after this just to see if this number even worked a little bit. But I would just, this is how I use the calculator. Kind of tells me what's going on. Now let's say you're self-managing, you're saving for CapEx, you're doing all that stuff. Makes sense. Let's update the analysis now if we're making that rent. So if you did all that work, you'd cash flow 154 bucks a month. I expect that for 1 door. So that's kind of what our market is. Like if I got, 450, this would be a different story. But to be honest, like I did it. And so I would probably stop analyzing this, but you know what? For the purposes of our sanity, let's do this instead. Let's say, 154 bucks a month. I'm not super happy with that. Like that's a lot of work and a lot of money to make almost nothing with a pretty low cash return. So at the end of the day, what I would actually do is I'd go back. And let's say if I'm putting 75 grand into this, right? So let's take 510 minus $75,000. Let's go backwards. Let's get 435. So if I bought it for 435,000 with 20% down, does it work? Okay, that's better. $881 a month in cash flow, 10% cash on cash return. Honestly, if you're an investor, I'd throw the offer out. Go all cash if you need to. Do what you got to do. That wouldn't be a bad idea if you can get it to perform that way. That would be probably my 2 cents if it costs 75 grand to do all the work. So for 800 bucks, you're doing okay. Almost $300 a month in cash flow per door. Not terrible. Especially because you're being super concerned, you're saving all that extra on the side. Not bad. So I would say it's a good route to look at. Now let's go from a different viewpoint. That was just as an investor, you're buying it, you're not going to live in it. What if you're a house hacker? What if you're someone that wants to buy this for themselves? So this is a different conversation. So let's go back to 510. Let's go down there's a really good conventional loan, Fannie Freddie, it's 5% down. So I'm actually going to add that expense a little bit. It's probably going to be closer to like $250 a month for other. So I can't really add PMI in here, which is fine, but I did that there. So 5% down, conventional Fannie Freddie loan. You put 5% down. It's a little bit better than FHA. They're a little bit less strict on the beauty of putting 5% down is that, if once you hit the value of 20% or more, you can get your PMI removed without refinancing. Great loan, Fannie Freddie. I know some great mortgage brokers if you ever want to talk about this loan. And so let's say if you want to live in a unit, start your investment portfolio and you put 5% down. So you got to live in 1 unit. So we know there's 2 1-bedrooms. I would absolutely rent that 3-bedroom out and I'd rent another 1-bedroom out. Could you do this? Would this be smart? So let's say you you buy it for 510 at asking, and then you just kind of sweat it out for 2 or 3 years, put money into it. So I'm not going to change the construction at all. Let's say you get 1 unit rented. We said 2,300 plus 1,400. Now you're at 3,700 a month, and you're living in the other unit. And you know what? I lied. I'll go back a little bit. Let's say we put some money into it. Let's convert it a little bit. Let's go 540. We'll put like 30 grand into it, and then you'll sweat out the rest of it. This is a debate now. This is pretty cool. This is a good math to work out. So you're gonna essentially pay 1,300 bucks a month in monthly cash flow. Now I gave yourself a property management fee. Again, if you're house hacking. So let's go back so everyone can see this. So if you go down, I said that you're gonna save for CapEx, repairs, vacancy, management fees. Okay, all of those, pretty standard. When people are house hacking, this is a really good aggressive thing to do. Doesn't always work. And so there's things you can do. I said you're paying yourself a property management fee. Let's say maybe you're not at that level and you're just like, listen, I want to live rent free. So let's get rid of that. Well, let's not pay myself. CapEx, I recommend saving for it. Repairs and maintenance, same thing. Vacancy, I recommend that. We could even, you're living there. Maybe the repairs and maintenance is less. Let's call it 2%. You're saving like a little bit on the side because you're doing a lot of the work yourself. Let's update the analysis now. So now we're at 980. Okay, so if you live in 1 unit and you're renting out the other 2 and you put some money into the building and you're doing a lot of the work, you're living in Manchester for about $1,000 a month. Some people would say that's garbage. Well, I'd say, well, listen, you could go rent a 1-bedroom, but you're paying somebody else almost $1,500 a month to live. You have to ask yourself if you're a house hacker, is this worth it to you? Do you want to pay yourself a mortgage $1,000 a month or pay somebody else $1,500 a month and they take care of everything? This, you're building sweat equity and appreciation over time and building it. You know, maybe you could be pretty advanced and do a cash, you could do a refinance later. A few different ways to look at it. I would tell a client, if I was advising them, like, this comes down to your risk tolerance, but I would ultimately say to them, I think it's a good deal because you're living for less than what you'd be renting for somebody else. It'd be a perfect world if you could get the whole thing paid for. That'd be awesome. But at the end of the day, you know, it comes down to your risk tolerance. So this is kind of me just analyzing a deal, guys. I went it from two different angles. I went from an investor standpoint at 20% down, and then I went it from a house hacker standpoint. This is what I did. This is what I do every single time with a client. I recommend, you know, going through this motion. And if you have questions at analyzing a deal, please reach out. Feel free to like, comment, and share. I'd love some feedback if you guys like this video. Happy to do more like this in the future. If you want to kind of see more videos like this, happy to kind of bring into your own sub-market. Feel free to comment your market below and let's go over some deals. And if you have one specifically, definitely let me know, and I'm happy to hop on a call with you. Feel free to add your, a meeting invite in my calendar. I'm happy to help you guys out. And let's get to the deal analysis. Thanks.